want to thank you for joining us for this live question and answer session today. In this session, we'll be answering some questions regarding how the current COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the Wildlife Center of Virginia from the perspective of our outreach department. Amanda Nicholson, the Wildlife Center of Virginia's Director of Outreach, will be addressing some of the questions that have come up since the release of our COVID-19 response video. So with that, I'll turn it over to Amanda to get started discussing your questions.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thank you guys for joining in this afternoon. I'm Amanda Nicholson. I'm the Director of Outreach at the Wildlife Center. So I'm guessing you saw our COVID-19 response video that we put out, in which we kind of hit a number of facets. Our vet director, Dr. Ernesto, talked about some of the logistical stuff with protecting staff and setting up cohorts within the building, and just basically good practices and PPE and kind of that level of things. My specialty is more dealing with communications and outreach and education side of things, as certainly this really threw us for a big loop, as well as we were looking at an extremely busy March calendar with lots of programs and events going on, and then that went straight to zero as everything had to be canceled. But we were able to do a number of online things as well, and that's actually what our pre-submitted questions were mostly about. So someone first asked if or how has the Wildlife Center online viewership been affected, and if we have seen an increase in online engagement. And yes, we have seen a big increase in online engagement. So I think we early on were trying to strive to connect with people online, just knowing that when this pandemic was hitting and things started being canceled left and right, a lot of people were very unsure what was going on, and we're looking for something. We're looking for some online connection. So we started doing a lot of online stuff, most particularly through Facebook Live, some tours and programs and such. So we saw a great response to that. So I guess that was kind of the silver lining of our Facebook viewership in general, jumped up quite a bit. We were able to see through our analytics. I'm a big fan of checking analytics and metrics through whatever platform you're working on. So whatever social media platform or your website, I like looking into all of that stuff. So we've been able to see that more people have connected with us online. So we know that people are definitely out there looking for things. Someone else asked how we decide what type of online program we should do. And to a certain extent, I think this is where you can get really creative, and it's also where you can just kind of experiment with some stuff and have some fun with it. I don't think there's any big, hard and fast rule about what you have to be doing, other than, of course, abiding by your own safe practices and best practices in terms of not causing undue stress to patients or anything like that, of course. So abiding by your own policies and always remembering animal welfare principles. But the Wildlife Center of Virginia has a collection of about 24 education animal ambassadors. So we have about a dozen raptors, a couple of opossums, and some snakes and some turtles that are all used for our education programming. So they're on our exhibitors permits. And we, when we were looking at what types of online programs to do, the very first and easiest thing that I knew I could just stand up and immediately do without any planning was just to have a live tour. And we decided to jump into that because we were actually in our open house season. So for us, open houses at the Wildlife Center are free events, but people do have to RSVP just because we have limited space in our building. And so we were, typically bring people in, chat with them for about half an hour, and then divide them into groups and take them on a tour of our hospital and our education ambassador area, because typically we're not open to the public. So when all this hit, we had to cancel all of our open houses. So we knew we were looking at a couple hundred people who had been looking forward to coming to see us and now couldn't. So that to me was like, well, let's do some sort of online tour for them, and I can just stand up and walk through the building and out back and give that tour. So that was an easy reach. And I think that's always the important thing to remember here too, is that certainly we want to connect with people, we want to educate people, we want to get all that good website and social media traffic. But we do have to be kind to ourselves and really think through what is feasible and doable. Certainly we all come from different experiences and backgrounds, and in terms of working at a large center, and maybe you have a split team where your education and outreach team are their own department, which is more like where we're coming from. Certainly there are lots of centers where people do it all. They're rehabilitating wildlife, they're answering the phone, they're also doing programs. So when you're faced with that, you really have to be kind to yourself and not feel like you have to do everything all of the time. So we were able to make the time to do that, but I think also as we leapt into action, we really were coming to terms with the idea that we're settling into a marathon here. This is not a race. This is not going to be over in a week or two. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to overextend ourselves and overcommit to something we couldn't keep up with. But the online tours were a really quick and easy thing we could do. We have also utilized different types of ambassador specific programs. So we've done a snake program and a turtle program. This afternoon we're doing a hawk program. Those are the sorts of things that we may not necessarily do sometimes, but it was easy for us just to schedule a little Facebook event and really delve deep into a particular species. So looking at natural histories and stories and relating it to that type of animal in our care at the Wildlife Center. And then, telling people what they can do to help. So that's enabled us to stretch things out a bit, and has been feasible in keeping up with as well. So hopefully that helps. Let's see, another question someone asked us was what different types of platforms we've used to do online programming. So the easy reach for us is Facebook Live stuff, just because we have a Facebook account. A lot of other people do too. And it's extremely simple just to go to your page and click, start a post and then go live. You don't need any special software. There's nothing to download. It's free and it reaches a ton of people right off the bat. So that is definitely really easy for us, and I would recommend it, especially if you're experimenting with things. We have also utilized Zoom like we are right now. So doing this type of Q&A session. So if we ever have an event where we have a kind of a closed audience or a more by invitation only audience, Zoom has been really useful for that. It's enabled us to do some different media stories as well. So as the media has asked us how we're doing in these times, or we just admitted 3 bear cubs in that had a big story because so many people were involved with their capture. So we've gotten a ton of media requests over the past day or so. Zoom has been really great at enabling us to connect with them. It gives us the technology that we need. It makes it easy for everyone, but it's safe and secure as well. and enables us to be safe and not have reporters coming to the center. I also did a private Zoom tour for a grant funder. We had a request for an organization who typically would do a site visit as they reviewed our grant application, and we were able to do that via Zoom. So she got a private Zoom tour, and while it may not be the same as actually standing there in person, it is pretty nice to still be able to do that and connect with people. So Facebook Live and Zoom are the big ones that we've used. We're looking into YouTube Live as well, which seems pretty straightforward using our YouTube account. And it can be one of those things that you can do like this through a webcam, or you can also do a screen share as well. So that can be, and I should say Facebook Live, you can also do screen sharing as well. So if you're doing something that's more like PowerPoint based or lecture based, you could utilize that as well. The advantage that I have seen thus far in looking into YouTube is that you can grab that link and embed code ahead of time. So you could anchor that somewhere on your website rather than just depending on going live on Facebook in that moment. And I should say we've also done some Instagram live things as well through our Instagram account. That's been fine. I think the big problem there is that you can't save those videos and share later. And also Instagram's pretty self-involved. So you have to be on Instagram to see it. So as opposed to Facebook, where you actually don't have to be a Facebook user to see a public video from a page. So definitely a wider audience on Facebook there. But that's what we've utilized. If you guys watching have utilized anything else, I would love to hear about it. And someone else asked about if we have any specific advice about doing Facebook Live for the first time, just in terms of, do you have to do it from a phone? Do you have to have really good Wi-Fi? So I have played around with this. You can do it from your computer or from your phone, doesn't really matter. You can do, if you're doing it from your phone, you can do it horizontally, which is always my preference when taking video, just looks a bit better. And I played around with this a lot. I think the downside of Facebook Live is you can't really experiment on your page. You can't really do things privately. But you can do it from your own personal account. And if you play around just going live on your own page or your own profile, yes, you can inflict your friends on watching you stumble through this. You can also set a custom audience and just set it to private, or you could select one really good friend that's going to help you out and just allow them to see it. So I actually did that a couple of times with a friend who was asking me these types of questions. So I just played around with it a bit there. And that can be a little more, feel a little bit safer, because I know if you have a big Facebook following, when you click go live, there's just something inherently terrifying about that. So practicing on your own profile can be helpful. And you don't have to have good Wi-Fi. So at our center, we don't really have great extensive coverage. So I just went off of my cellular plan and just turned my Wi-Fi off. So it's definitely driving up my usage and draining some batteries, but for longer tours. But it's been able to have a good connection for us. Let's see. So I think those are all of the online program specific questions I had. There was one question that was submitted. Someone asked if our animal ambassador training has been affected by the lack of in-person programs, and if so, how to compensate. So certainly the programs themselves are not on the calendar at this point. We have been fortunate in that our team who works with the education ambassadors has still been able to go in and care for those animals. We had to be really cautious with how we went about that, and in our video, and in last week's Q&A discussion, Dr. Ernesto discussed a little bit more about how the vet and rehab staff at the Wildlife Center are split into cohorts so that they don't overlap with each other, so that if one person comes down sick in a particular team, they're not compromising the entire staff. So we could have factored into that probably if we wanted to and just split ourselves into teams. But the way that our schedules were structured, we figured that may not be really easy or really useful to us. So instead, we are kind of considered our own wayward little cohort, I guess. And we were fortunate enough where we had a small little isolation room that was really set up for patient necropsies, and it has an exterior door on it. So we set that room up for the outreach team so that we could come and go and do our own food preparation in that room. And that's the only room that we're utilizing in our buildings. We're not going into the main hospital so that we don't come into the same area where the other staff are working. So basically, that's enabled us to still go in daily and do our daily care of our ambassadors and daily training work with our birds, since generally we treat training as an ongoing process, and that was important for us to do. So we've been able to do that still. I would say that all of our birds are kind of at different places in their training and their quirks and their things that we're trying to work on. So certainly for the birds who are at the point where they really just need more experience in front of people, we can't give that to them at this point. So we are just trying to work on some other behaviors and some other things to make life easier. And I expect that some of the birds who need a little bit more experience in front of people are probably going to have a bit of a setback just in terms of when we can do programs again. They need to get used to that idea again of being in a room full of people. But we're certainly trying our best to keep up with that daily training as much as we can through different behaviors. And my last question that was pre-submitted, so I hope you guys have a couple questions too. My last question is, how is your organization making sure you have a unified voice regarding all of the COVID-19 messaging and updates? Which is a great question. The outreach department, I guess part of my job is really to make sure that I'm carrying the voice of the center and making sure that all of our messaging is consistent when we put it out there on our website and social media and in the media as well. So I think just making sure we're communicating internally really well. A lot of the directors and different managers of staff, we are meeting twice a week via Zoom just to have a check-in with each other. So that's really enabled us to stay connected. The meetings seem to be getting more efficient since a little bit less is changing day to day in the world. But it's enabled us to just have a good regular scheduled time to bring up some of the issues or questions that we have and make sure that we're dealing with things effectively and getting word out there on the website or with staff members and whatever. So that's been really good. Certainly just as a number of us are working from home, making sure we're staying up to date on emails and things like that. And if you guys are looking for any other recommendations on technologies for communications, Maggie could actually probably speak about this one too, but we've utilized Discord, which is a platform that actually I believe a lot of gamers use, but we've set it up for the Wildlife Center staff, and it's been really fun. So it's just something that we're using to communicate with each other internally, but we can have different channels on there so that just the outreach department can have a little area that's just for us, or just the vet staff, or just the rehab staff. And then there's like an everyone channel. So it's been nice just to stay in touch and ask questions, but also just to, be goofy and post weird GIFs and kind of to make each other smile as well, and just make sure that we still feel like we're being all connected.